What if I told you that one of the most brutal serial killers in American history used to have drinks with cops and helped solve murders while committing them himself? This is the story of Edmund Kemper, the man who killed his own grandparents, hunted college girls, and still had the audacity to sit down with the FBI and explain exactly how he did it. So hit that subscribe button if you're into real stories more disturbing than fiction. Because what you're about to hear will make you question how well you know the people around you. He was called the Co-ed Killer, but behind that nickname was something far more chilling. A genius-level psychopath with a photographic memory, an obsession with control, and a voice so calm it could narrate bedtime stories. Except his stories didn't end with happy ever afters. They ended with bodies dumped in ditches, dismembered limbs buried in forests, and the heads of his victims stored like trophies. And yet, he didn't look like a monster. He looked like your friendly neighbor. He acted like a gentle giant. He spoke with law enforcement, psychologists, and eventually millions of people. But beneath that mild-mannered exterior was a calculating, cold-blooded killer, and his crimes, they weren't random. They were rehearsed, perfected, repeated until he couldn't hide it anymore. This is the story of Edmund Kemper, the killer who couldn't stop talking. At a Atascadero State Hospital, the staff thought Ed was a model patient. He was intelligence scoring well above average on IQ tests. And polite, too polite. What no one noticed was that he was studying the doctors just as much as they were studying him. He learned how to say the right things, how to hide his true thoughts, and most chilling of all, how to gain trust. He read psychology books in his spare time, especially ones about other patients. He later admitted, "I learned how to fake being sane by reading their playbook." In 1969, just before his 21st birthday, Ed convinced the doctors he was rehabilitated. The state agreed to release him back into his mother's care. They had no idea they were sending him back into the very environment that created him. Back in Santa Cruz, Ed enrolled in community college and tried to seem normal. He went to bars, worked odd jobs, and even applied to become a state trooper. They rejected him not for his past but because of his size. He was now 6'9". He pretended to laugh it off, but deep down, rejection burned. Again, he started hanging around cops, drinking with them, listening to their stories. He became known as Big Ed, a harmless giant who liked to chat with officers. They had no idea who they were talking to. By 1972, he'd had enough of pretending. He bought a car and started picking up female hitchhikers around the Bay Area. At first, he let them go. He was practicing. Then, he started bringing tools in the car. Knives, plastic bags, handcuffs. Ed Kemper had begun hunting. Edmund Kemper didn't snap. He rehearsed, he planned, he calculated everything like a man building a machine. And in 1972, that machine began running for real. It started with Marianne Pess and Anita Lucesa, two Fresno State students hitchhiking to Stanford. They never arrived. Kemper picked them up near Berkeley. He looked harmless, chatted politely, made them laugh. Then, he drove them into the woods. He handcuffed one and locked the other in the trunk. Then, with surgical coldness, he killed them one at a time. He later claimed he wanted to see what it felt like. But the horror didn't stop there. He brought their bodies home to his mother's house. While she slept upstairs, he dismembered them in the garage. He took photos, removed body parts, and casually flushed blood down the toilet. The next day, he buried some remains in the backyard, facing upward toward his mother's bedroom window. "Why?" he said. "So she'd always have company." 2 months later, he struck again. Cindy Shaw, a high schooler, blonde, quiet. She was just trying to get to class when Kemper picked her up. Again, he brought her to his mother's house. This time, he waited until she was asleep, then carried the body into her room and mocked her with it. He placed the corpse on her bed, telling himself, "Look what you made me do." This wasn't just about violence. It was about punishing his mother. Every victim, every scream, every mutilation was an echo of the rage he held for Colonel Kemp. But to the outside world, he was Big Ed. Friendly, helpful, funny. A guy who played chess with cops and helped neighbors carry groceries. He even returned to the state hospital voluntarily, just for therapy. They said he was fully rehabilitated. He passed every test. Meanwhile, the body count kept rising, and no one had a clue. By 1973, Ed Kemper had killed 6 young women, all decapitated. But in truth, none of them were the real target. They were practice. The person he really wanted to kill was still alive, and she was sleeping just upstairs. His mother, Colonel Strandberg. Colonel was louder than ever. She mocked him daily, told him no woman would ever love him, told him he was just like his father, told him she wished he had never been born. And Ed, he smiled. He cleaned the house, cooked her meals, said good night every evening like a good little boy. And then he planned. On the night of April 20th, 1973, he waited until she fell asleep. Then he walked into her bedroom and beat her to death with a claw hammer. That wasn't enough. He decapitated her, screamed at the severed head, and, in his own words, put her vocal cords in the garbage disposal. But even the garbage disposal spit them back out. Then he propped her head on a shelf and screamed at it for hours. He later said that seemed appropriate. She always wanted the last word. But he wasn't finished. That same night, he called over his mother's best friend. He invited her in, then killed her too. He said he didn't want anyone to feel sad for his mother, so he gave her company. 2 bodies in the house. One a lifetime of hatred, the other. And yet, when it was done, Ed Kemper didn't run. He didn't hide. He got in his car and drove to Colorado. He waited for the news to break. But no one said a word. No headlines, no manhunt, no missing persons report. The world had moved on, and Ed couldn't stand it. So he pulled over, called the police, and confessed to everything. He told the officer on the phone, "I killed my mother, and I killed her friend. I killed 6 others before that. You might want to send someone." They didn't believe him at first, but when they went to the house, the smell hit them before they opened the door. Once arrested, Ed didn't demand a lawyer. He didn't plead the fifth. He didn't even blink. He talked. 4 hours, 4 days. 2 detectives, 2 psychiatrists, to anyone who would listen. But there was one group he was especially eager to speak to. The FBI. At the time, the Behavioral Science Unit was still in its infancy. They were trying to understand the minds of serial killers, but most of them wouldn't open up. Kemper, he rolled out the red carpet. He sat down across from agents like John Douglas and Robert Ressler, the very men who would inspire the Netflix series Mindhunter decades later. And what they got from Kemper wasn't just insight. It was a play-by-play tutorial on how to become a monster. He described each killing in cold, surgical detail, where he parked, how he chose his victims, what he said to them, how long they lived, what he did to their bodies afterward. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't apologize. At one point, he even said, "I cut off her head and had sex with it. Then I carried it inside in a paper bag." No hesitation, no shame, just facts. The FBI couldn't believe it. Here was a man with the intelligence of a university professor and the emotional detachment of a machine. He remembered everything. He analyzed everything. He even gave them tips on what questions to ask other killers. He told them why strangulation takes longer than movies show, why hitchhikers don't scream when they think they're being polite, why it's easy to lure victims with a friendly face. And the scariest part, he made it all sound reasonable. John Douglas later said, Kemper was more valuable than 100 textbooks. And that wasn't a compliment, it was a warning, because Edmund Kemper didn't just live in the shadow, he understood them, and he helped the world realize how many more were still out there. You'd think that after confessing to 10 murders, Edmund Kemper would shut up, but nope. In prison, he just kept talking. He wasn't put on death row. California had just suspended the death penalty, so instead, he got 8 life sentences, and was locked up in California Medical Facility alongside other infamous killers like Charles Manson. But Ed, he thrived. He became the model inmate, organized the prison library, recorded over 5,000 hours of audio books for the blind. Yes, children's stories narrated by a serial killer. He even played chess with the guards. Some of them liked him, others were terrified. In interviews, Kemper still seemed weirdly likable, calm, well-spoken. He joked. He quoted Shakespeare. You'd almost forget what he had done, until he casually mentioned keeping severed heads in his car, like someone describing leftover groceries. When asked if he felt remorse, he said, "There's no need for me to hurt anyone else. I did it all. I don't want to hurt anyone again." Then he smiled. Even now, Edmund Kemper is still alive. Still behind bars. Still talking. He's refused parole multiple times, saying he doesn't deserve freedom. The guards call him the gentle giant. And the psychologists, they just call him a textbook case. Because what Ed Kemper revealed to the world was that a serial killer doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes he looks like the guy holding the door for you, the man smiling at the bar, the son making his mother tea. Until one day, he stops pretending. And what truly haunts us is how easily he fooled everyone. Doctors, police, neighbors, friends. He was the man you'd never suspect. A walking contradiction, genius IQ, emotional void, well-mannered, deeply violent, a gentle voice, describing horrors no one should ever imagine. Even the FBI admits without Kemper, their profiling system might have taken years longer to develop. He taught them how monsters move through society unnoticed, how they talk, how they plan, how they pretend. And now, he's 70-something, alive, breathing, reading books, still in that same prison. But if there's one thing we've learned about Edmund Kemper, it's that monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes they hold the door open with a smile. If this gave you chills, there's more where that came from. Subscribe to UTAK Diaries for the most twisted true crime deep dives, historical nightmares, and stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Drop a comment if you made it to the end. And remember, the most dangerous people are the ones you'd never suspect.